Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open with the talk show host Skye Daley interviewing a former child star. Ricky sits in the shadows and recounts the story of what deformed him into having the silhouette of a cactus. We flash back to when he was employed by the Everything Except Shoes Corporation fronted by a dick of both name and reputation. There's also a board of executives, but they're just extensions of dick and get hauled around in the back of a furniture truck. Ricky was hired to promote a fertilizer called Zygrade 24, which is banned in most countries for being lethal, but George assures us that it's safe. He's the head developer and spent years working with the chemical, but that's probably why he shrinks before our very eyes. For $2 million, Ricky is still skeptical, but for $5 million he catches the next flight to South America because they're the only ones buying this crap. He brings along his best friend Ernie, but during the flight an attendant discovers a kid who's stowed away inside their luggage. Stuey is a superfan who Ricky tries to avoid, but he read about the dangerous fertilizer and pleads with his hero not to promote it. Fortunately, the drinks cart comes along and a series of mishaps leads to the kid falling out of the plane, but everyone just pretends it never happened. Thanks to a pile of hay, Stuey survives the fall completely unscathed while the boys arrive safely in the town of Santa Fe. They come across a group of environmentalists protesting Zygrade and Ricky becomes smitten with the activist Julie. He wraps himself in bandages and pretends to be a victim of everything except shoes, which makes Julie reciprocate the attraction. She joins him and Ernie for the drive to the next protest. However, Ricky reveals his identity in a moment of anger when she insults him. Realizing this is the douchebag promoting the fertilizer, Julie wants to get out, but she's stuck with him until they come across a freak show. It's tucked away in the jungle, and for all of her grandstanding, Julie seems awfully excited to gawk at some unfortunates.
Right.
They find the place empty but feel the set of eyeballs and the giant laughing clown watching them at every turn they make. Out steps the ringleader Elijah, who invites the guests to a private exhibit in his shed, but there's something off about this redneck. He has an assistant called Toad who uses his elongated tongue to eat rabbits whole and steals Ernie's food and cigarettes when he isn't looking. Upon entering the creepy weirdo's shed, who would have guessed that the three tourists would be taken prisoner and strapped to operating tables? Eli's a mad scientist who doesn't just work the freaks but makes new mutations with a machine powered by Zygrade. He chooses the type of ailment that he wants to give the subject, then the machine produces a green sludge that he rubs onto their flesh. It fuses Julie and Ernie into conjoined twins that share whatever's between their legs, and when one clears their throat the other spits. Toad takes them away while Ricky is transformed into a grotesque two-faced troll with a clawed talon and a psychic connection to Stuey. Elijah throws him into a tiny shed which is much bigger on the inside because of handy tips from the home improvement guru Bob Villa. Ricky and his friends find themselves prisoners along with the most excellent dog boy Ortiz, who's the leader of the freaks. He hosts a game of celebrity squares to introduce them, including the giant worm who came to Santa Fe to study an actual worm before Eli captured him. Sockhead was a tourist who traveled here for fun, but one night his reputation is ruined when the audience learns that he's actually just a hand. The Pinhead Rosie has only two speeds, either standing there all elegant and graceful or going full wailing banshee during her performances. The anthropomorphic cow Cowboy can recycle the fertilizer just by eating the grass and be squeezed into Zygrade milk. The bearded lady was a gender-confused man who was simply given a sex change and seems like the only one who's here voluntarily. There's also a guy with a giant nose called Nosey, a chronic farter called the Eternal Flame, and a normal dude in a wetsuit called the Frogman. The center square contestant is still Paul Lynde 10 years after his real-life death, which was enough time passing to make this joke. We also see a breakdancing Bigfoot with anger issues and a hammer who was once a wrench, but they aren't shown again. Ricky has a hard time adjusting to his new life, even with the help of guides on what to do when you become a hideous mutant freak. Julie begins fooling around with Ortiz, but that means that Ernie has to just lie there and take it like a good little freak. One night Ricky tells Stuey with his psychic connection that he was transformed into a monster, so the kid tries to break the news. He gets thrown out of all the papers until eventually somebody prints it, but the attention gets him kidnapped by Everything Except Shoes. At the Mutant Emporium, people from all over gather to watch the conjoined strangers dancing on stage and bickering with each other. Ricky is called the Beast Boy and expected to behave like a savage on stage, but Worm tells him to turn his hardship into inspiration. He goes out and performs Shakespeare's Richard III, who was also a physically deformed man trying to put on a face. It's a most triumphant performance, so Julie falls out of love with the dog boy and in love with Ricky, but nobody is happier than Ernie, who now gets to try different styles. An agent from Everything Except Shoes enters, so Ricky assumes they've come to save him, but the man begins to mock his hideous appearance. The whole crowd joins in with the laughing, so an angry Ricky rips the agent's head off his shoulders, but that still doesn't shut him up.
Now you're just being childish.
The audience flees in terror while the freaks are thrown back into the shed, and the next day Ricky attempts to escape by himself. He tricks the milkman/films director into unlocking the door with the promise of seeing a turd shaped like Kim Basinger. Ricky steals his uniform, however, before he can escape, the laughing clown's eyeballs reveal themselves as a couple of Rastas packing Tech-9s. I take him to Elijah, who says that at the next show he plans to mutate Ricky into a bloodthirsty monster to kill the rest of the freaks. He allows him to return to the others because there's no way past the eyeballs, but he runs into the freaks all using the same method of escape. They're angry at Ricky for abandoning them, so they don't believe him when he warns them about the all-seeing guards, and Ortiz even pulls a knife. Ricky does battle with the dog boy, which Elijah just assumes is some kind of zoning dispute because there are so many milkmen on the same route. Ortiz is about to win but gets distracted by a squirrel and runs right into the line of sight of the two half-baked henchmen. They chase him away while the rest of the milkmen apologize to Ricky because he just saved their lives and return to the freak shack. The group come up with a plan to defeat Elijah, which sees Worm burrow underground into the lab so they can steal some Zygote. On the way they come across the lost city of Nod as well as a waterspout in Yellowstone and some photos from Ernie's bar mitzvah. Most of the freaks remain behind, but Sockhead goes crazy just waiting around and attracts I's attention. He tries to rush them, but Saki gets lit up by the guards and bleeds out in his friend's arms, as indicated by his wrist neck going limp.
That's not full of holes, man.
Meanwhile, the rest use the freak machine to create a mutagen that will keep Ricky in control when Elijah tries to have him kill the others. However, the tunnel caves in and Ricky is forced to leave the Zygote behind so that he can make it back through safely. The mission wasn't a complete failure because Ricky found some macaroons in the lab, so they celebrate by eating the whole bag. Before the next show, Dick and the executives arrive to do business with Elijah and bring Stuey because they assumed he was one of the freaks. The kid gets thrown into a coop with a two-headed chicken but manages to escape because nobody bothers to keep an eye on him. He just grabs the good Zygote right in front of the whole room, who are too distracted watching Eli present his expanded Freakshow. Dick isn't impressed as he already has the idea that the machine be used to create a new race of secretaries with 6 arms known as the multi-use female. The night of the mutant massacre, the freaks are locked in a cage while Ricky is strapped to a table in front of an audience. Stewie attempts to get him the good Zygote, but a member of the crowd pours it on his head, turning the kid into his own giant troll. He's now impenetrable and super strong, so decides to take down the boss himself, who calls for his eyeballs and Toad to save him. Stewie just hits the eyes with some pocket sand and they run away while Julie and Ernie make Toad swallow a firecracker and blow him to pieces. Eli then slaps Ricky in the face with the chemical, finishing his transformation on his better half and ordering him to kill the other mutants. Stewie battles him on stage to save them while Dick attempts to steal the machine from Elijah, but he predicted this betrayal and brought along his bazooka. It fires Zygote onto the everything except shoes executives, who all melt down into a puddle of goo. Then reform into a single disturbing looking shoe that moans in agony and hops away. Ricky comes close to killing Stewie, but Cowboy reminds him of their psychic connection, so he snaps out of it and the two hug. He then turns to Elijah, who's no match for the monster he's created and has his spine broken before being kicked in the balls really hard. Just then the FBI arrive, having read Stewie's article, and come to save all the freaks from Elijah and the dastardly Dick. Eli lands in a vat of Zygote and emerges with the appearance of Skye Daley, but the agents just gun her down in a hail of lead. We return to the present-day interview, where Ricky is revealed to have transformed back into normal along with all of the other freaks who ate the biscuits. Elijah had baked an antidote into them, but Worm never ate any, so he must remain a mutant forever, like Ortiz, who suddenly shows up. He finally catches the squirrel and reunites with the freaks when the mutated feet on Skye reveal that she's actually Elijah. She pulls a machete but gets shot dead by Julie, who just happened to have a loaded gun and runs over to embrace Ricky. Stewie enters still in his overgrown troll form when Skye Elijah returns, but Ernie shoots her deader this time because now they all just carry guns. Ricky and Julie share a kiss as everyone waves goodbye to the audience, but the villain rises up behind them like Jason Voorhees. And the movie ends.